Principle 7. Provide appropriate disclosure to the referring party concerning fees, evaluator role, and procedures. Now, there's a couple of ways in which I do that. Page 74 is my disclosure to the agency. I send this to the agency in advance. I don't think, remember I said earlier, I don't have a client. I have multiple parties to whom I owe various ethical and legal duties. One of them is the paying client, the agency, and in all fairness, they're not even paying for it. It's city government or state government or taxpayers, if you will, but the money actually sometimes comes elsewhere. But I want them to know what's going to happen. I want them to know what my fees are going to be. I want them to know what the limitations are to my service. I want to know what's required of them, what I'm going to give them, how much I'm going to charge them if there's a no-show or if they cancel at the last minute. I want to tell them all that up front. That's part of the disclosure. So I send that to them in advance. That way, when I send them a bill for that person who walks into my office and says, informed consent, my attorney told me not to fill it out, not to sign it, and I go, hey, perfectly fine, see ya. Take it up with your employer, it's perfectly fine with me if you don't sign it. No skin off my nose. I'm sending them a bill for the 3 hours I had set aside for that clinical interview. They know that, it's in the disclosure form. We talk about collections, if I have to go to collection, terminating the agreement, blah, blah, blah. Then, because I know that they have a very short attention span, I give them an executive summary of those very same disclosures on page 78 and 79. Then on page 80, this is the employee disclosure and informed consent statement. And because HIPAA asks for informed consent and authorization to be separated from each other, I have Exhibit A as the authorization, and the informed consent is the first part of that. I asked the employer to provide this disclosure to the employee in advance. I don't want them seeing that for the first time when they show up in my office. I want them to have had time to discuss it with their union, to talk to their attorney about it, so that their attorney can look at it and say, oh yeah, this is entirely reasonable, or perhaps there's a sentence in here we could tweak. I'm happy to tweak. If it doesn't change the intent and I can live with it legally and ethically, I'll be happy to do that. I did one the other day where they said they negotiated with the employer that the only thing that they would receive would be a fit or unfit finding. I said, I think that's a bad idea for the reasons that I've articulated, well, that I will be articulating a little bit later this morning. But that's your call. If you two negotiate that and that's what you want, that's what I'll give you. So I changed the disclosure to include that. I actually asked them, you write it the way you think it should be written. If I object to it, I'll let you know. But if I can live with your writing, I'll be happy to do that. So we did, and that's all done in advance. I prefer that all the disclosure and informed consent takes place beforehand, because you will notice on page 81, down at the bottom, I'm going to ask them when they come into my office before they sign this to check one of these two boxes. I require additional time to consult with my attorney or other advisor. Initial here and check this box. Or alternatively, I have read, understand, and agree to the terms of the informed consent statement, and they sign it.
And this is before they get there.
This is going to be signed when they get to my office. I want them to have had a time to read this before. So when they get to my office, if they feel they need more time in order to consult with their attorney, absolutely go do so.
But you've blocked out 3 hours.
I've blocked out 3 hours. And I'm going to charge for it. That's right. But it's perfectly fine with me. Yes?
When my agencies call for a fitness for duty, they want it yesterday. It's always an emergency, and they always need it done right now.
Okay.
Especially if the person is perceived as gravely disabled.
So her agency is they want the examination yesterday, right away.
All these consultations, all these emails back and forth, all these discussions, all these disclosures, I would just like like to know how long it usually takes you from the initial call to actually doing it.
Okay, given that it's all takes time to do all this disclosure and discussion and pre-referral consult, on average, I think if you tried to get into my office today for a fitness for duty evaluation, it would probably be 2.5 weeks.
Really?
Yes,
And they're on administrative leave in the meantime?
absolutely.
The departments don't care.
Now, if they need it done right away, go see someone else. I can't do it. I can't do it. I still do probably 3 fitness evaluations, sometimes 4 a week, but I'm not going to rush it, Christina. Their emergency isn't my emergency.
Okay.
You rush a fitness for duty evaluation, you are asking for trouble. These are high stakes evaluations for everyone, including you. I would not do it. Okay, so you talk about fee, you talk about differences in rate. If you have any differences in rate, I don't charge more for, generally, I mean there's exceptions to this, but generally don't charge more for one service versus another. I just charge for my time. Collateral records and other documents that I require in the product that I'll be delivering. You may notice that on page 78, I also make reference to Colon versus City of Newark. What I let them know is, don't be cherry picking the records you send me. Don't just send me stuff where you're saying this person looks good because you want them to pass, or they look bad because you don't want them to pass. You're liable for that. If there's a consequence down the road, yours will have been the action that led to the bad result, not mine. So don't be cherry picking. They go, well, we have a whole lot of records. Why don't you do this? Why don't you just photocopy all of them and send a courier over with your 2 banker's boxes full of records, and I'll just sort through what's relevant and what's not. Oh, that would be great if you would do that. Now, you know, I'm charging for my time. I mean, it's not, I would rather not go through all those records, but if that's the way in which they want to do it, then that's the way we'll do it. I mean, I've never charged I've never charged 5 figures for a fitness for duty evaluation. I know some of my colleagues have. I've never charged a 5-figure fee. But I can imagine a situation in which that could easily happen. But even if it were, even if we charge $10,000 or more for a fitness for duty evaluation, it is small potatoes compared to what these folks wind up paying in litigation costs when it goes bad. Take your time. Do it right. Even after I do the evaluation, the report may be 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road. I am not rushing this. I've got other evaluations lined up. It's not like I got the evaluation and then I block out the rest of the week to get the evaluation done. I need medical records that still aren't here. There's some collateral interviews that may need to be conducted. Once I get that, then I've got to fit it into my schedule. This isn't going to be done right away, folks. This is going to take time. They understand that, and it does take a process of re-education of the agency. Yes?
Do you do a verbal to them in those 3 weeks that you're...
Do I give a verbal? I give a verbal if I have an answer. If I don't have an answer, I don't.
Well, on a dangerous...
And I sometimes get phone calls and pressures, and you know, we really need an answer. The employee, I have one right now, the employee is just enraged because he wants to go back to work. Not my problem. I understand.
If it's
Now, never mind, Victoria, but they were off work 4 months before it ever got to me. But now they want it right now.
Right.
You know, sorry. I'm not falling for
Your
that.
emergency
You know, I
is
didn't
not
just fall off the turnip truck. You know?
I'll read this in depth, but do you try to get in some indemnification or pass on legal costs to your client?
No. I don't try to ask the question if I try to get indemnification or pass on legal costs. No, that's the cost of doing business.
Okay.
And that's what
Yes.
you're billing for, part of what you're billing?
Yes.
No, I was,
No, okay. Now, what I think you should absolutely never do is ask the examinee to waive a civil suit against you. I believe that that's wrong. If you do an incompetent job, they should sue you. If you don't, you're protected. That's why you have malpractice insurance. But to deprive them of the opportunity to seek redress if there was in fact a violation, I just think in advance, how can you waive
Probably wouldn't
what you
hold
don't
up
know?
anyway.
I just think that that's wrong. And in some states, it's illegal.